make a series of donuts. So the first thing I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to grab my ellipse tool and I'm going to draw a circle that's going to become the donut. Okay, so after I draw that circle, I'm going to go ahead and hit Control C to copy, Control F to paste it, and then I'm going to scale this circle down. So there's a couple ways you can scale it down. You can either go to Object, Transform, Scale, or you can right-click, Transform and Scale. Either way, it'll do the same thing. So I'm going to scale this down, let's say about 75%, and we'll call that good. Then I'm going to go ahead and copy this circle that I just made. So hit Control C to copy, Control F to paste it on top. And then I'm going to scale this down. So if you right click or you can go to Object, either way it'll do the same thing. We'll scale this one down about, we'll say 50%. Go OK. And then I'm going to copy this circle that I just made. Control C to copy, Control F to paste it directly on top, and then I'm going to scale this one down. So you right click, transform scale, and we'll go 50% with that one. So go ahead and click OK. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all these circles that I just drew, and I'm going to use my Pathfinder tool, and I'm going to divide them. So if you can't find your Pathfinder tool, look under Window. You'll find it there. Okay, so we're going to use the divide option. So while everything is selected, grab everything with your selection tool. You're going to hit this divide option. So when it divides it, it's going to cut through everything. But when it cuts through everything, it groups everything together. So what we're now going to need to do is ungroup it. So you can either ungroup it by going to Object, Ungroup, or you could right click and ungroup to ungroup those objects. I'm going to go ahead and select this circle here in the middle, and I'm going to hit backspace to delete it, because I want this to be a hollow shape. So I'm going to go ahead and throw some color in here, just so we can see what's going on with those colors or with these circles here. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and copy this whole set of circles that I drew. So I'll select all those with my selection tool. I'm going to hit Control C, and I'll hit Control V to paste it because I don't need it to sit directly on top. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to have all those selected, and I'm going to scale down the size of this whole thing a little bit. So again, to scale it, you can either go to Object, Transform, Scale, or you could right click, Transform and Scale, and I only want to scale this down about let's say 75%. So if you hit that preview button, you can see what's going on with that. Actually, I might go, let's go 65%. I think that will be a little bit better. No, that's too much. Okay, let's go 85. 85%. 85% is good. Okay, we'll go ahead and click OK. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I want to make this hole here in the middle a little bit bigger. So I could just cut a bigger hole, but I'm going to show you something else you could do instead of doing that. So if you take your direct selection tool, okay, and you click on the anchor points around the inside of the circle. So when you click on them, click on the first one, then hold shift, click on the second, the third, and the fourth while holding shift so that you can select just those inside circles. If you don't select them individually by holding shift while you click on them, it will select the whole circle. So we don't want to do that. We just want to select what's inside. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale the size of this circle to a larger scale. So if you right click, we can open up the scale window, and I'm going to maybe scale this up, let's say 150%. I think that'll be good. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Okay, and now with my selection tool, let me drag this, let's make sure we get everything selected. Let's select everything here. I'll drag this over just to check how that looks, and I think it's going to do what I need to do. So I'm going to set this off to the side for a minute. Okay, so now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to grab this inner circle of this original set that we drew, and I'm going to double click on my fill over here, and I'm going to create a lighter shade of this color, because we're going to create a gradation or a blend of these values to give this more of a three-dimensional look to it. Okay, now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go and make a copy of that, and I'm going to set this off to the side because we're going to make a couple different types of donuts. So I'm going to save this one for later, so we'll just set this off on the edge. We'll come back to that later. Okay, so now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to select everything, and then I'm going to remove the stroke color. Okay, so if we click on this box and we click on this little square that says none, that will take out the color there. That's going to be important to remove the stroke when we go to do this next step. If you don't remove the stroke, it's going to mess up what it is you're trying to accomplish. So now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to select all these circles again with my selection tool, and then what we're going to do is we're going to go to Object. We're going to scroll down till we find blend. Blend. Here it is. Okay, Object, Blend, and we're going to select Make. Okay, so now what that's going to do is it's going to blend those three colors together, and this will give this more of a roundish three-dimensional look. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this set of circles into a ring of frosting. But before I do that, I'm going to select the whole thing and copy it, paste it, and I'll set this off to the side. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the color of these, and I'm going to make this pink frosting because I like pink frosting. And so we're going to go with that. So I'll click on this inner circle and I'll make it that same shade. And actually I'll make this third one the same, but I'm going to go ahead and click on this fill color here so I can get a lighter variation of that color. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and select everything. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out the stroke color just like I did on the original donut here. Take out the stroke color, and then what we'll do is have everything selected. We're going to go back under Object. We're going to go to Blend and Make just like we did before. Okay, so this is going to create the frosting ring to go on top, but I don't want it to be quite so smooth. I want it to maybe look a little rougher, not so perfect. So to get this effect, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here to the top where it says Effect, and under Effect we're going to go to Distort and Transform, and we're going to choose the option of Roughen. Okay, so we'll go to Effect, Distort and Transform, and Roughen. Okay, so right now that's looking a little rough. So the first thing I'm going to do, make sure your preview button is selected so you can see what's going on, is we're going to smooth that out. Okay, and so we'll do that by clicking on the points here to make them smooth, and we're going to decrease the amount of detail there, maybe to about 2 will probably be good. The size, I have this at 5%, but maybe we can shrink that down to about 2%. So we'll do both the size and the detail to 2, so we'll go ahead and click OK. Okay, so now I can slide this over, and now we've got this first base for a donut. Okay, so one of the things I like to have on my donuts are sprinkles, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a sprinkle. So to make that sprinkle, I'm going to grab my rounded rectangle tool, and I'm going to draw a little sprinkle shape there. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my gradient tool. Okay, so the gradient tool over here. So you've got two gradient tools. This one manipulates where the gradient is, but this one will manipulate the colors in the gradient. So we're going to just work with this one. So if you can't find this over here on the right side, look under Window, scroll down till you find Gradient, and then it'll open up that window. So let's go ahead and throw a gradient in there. And I think what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to make this sprinkle a blue. Okay, so I'm going to add another color inside the gradient panel. And so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on this white one, which will give me my color choices. So you might have this option. I always like to use my swatches because swatches are easier for me to work with because I can just see the color and just choose what I want. Okay, so I'm going to make that first one a darker blue. I'm going to click on this middle one, I'm going to make that a lighter blue, and then this last one, I'm going to go ahead and make it that darker blue too. And this will give this kind of a round, three-dimensional look to it. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is if you put a gradient in there and I take that, I can spin that around to whatever color I want it to be or whatever position I want it in. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and then maybe what I'll do is I'll actually change the color for this sprinkle, and maybe I'll make this one orange. So I'll just switch the colors in my gradient, and I'll make this an orange sprinkle. And maybe I'll spin that around a little bit. Okay. And maybe we'll make one or two more. Maybe I'll make a green sprinkle. So I'm going to use green, variations of that green. So we'll have it darker on the side, lighter in the middle here. And I'm going to go ahead and call that good. But you can potentially make as many colors, sprinkles as you would like, or as many variations as you want. So I'm going to go ahead and copy those. So if I hit Control C and Control V, I can copy it and then paste it, and then I can just arrange these on my donut how I want my sprinkles to look. So I might move this around, mix it up a little bit, and maybe I'll throw a couple more on here just to add a little variety there. Don't want too many sprinkles because then it gets too crazy, but you can put as many sprinkles on there as you want or that you feel is good. And if you want to spin some of these things around, just click on the shape with your selection tool, and then you can rotate them and mix it up however you want it to look. Or if you want all your sprinkles to be one color, you can do that. It's all up to you. You've got the freedom of choice. So there you go. All right. Now what I think I might do is I'm going to select all these sprinkles that I made. So if you click on the first sprinkle, then hold Shift, you can go through and select all the individual sprinkles there without selecting the whole donut. But you have to hold Shift while you're selecting these, otherwise it will just select one and then the other. So if you want to select them all, click on the first one, hold Shift, and then select them all. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of a drop shadow underneath those sprinkles. So let me pull this drop shadow window, and I'm going to maybe pull this in a little bit, adjust it so it creates a little bit of a shadowy area underneath my sprinkles there, just so it looks like more like it's sitting on top of that. Okay, so I just set my X to 0, my Y to 0, and then I put this blur to 0.025, and I think that looks good, so I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Okay, so now got my donuts with some sprinkles, and if I want to, I could even add a cast shadow underneath my donuts. So if you go to Effect, Stylize, Drop Shadow, maybe I'll offset that a little bit, create a little bit more of a blur. Maybe push that down. Okay, like so. But the drop shadow is not necessary, but it does help to create a little more of a three-dimensional look to it. Okay, so now what I can do is I can take this donut thing that I had from earlier, and maybe I'll make this a chocolate donut. So I'm going to change the colors to make this a chocolate donut. So I'm going to use a dark brown for this, and I'm going to use a little bit of a lighter brown inside there, because we want it to look kind of chocolatey. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and select those. I'm going to first remove the stroke around it, and then I'm going to go under Object, Blend, and Make to blend those colors together. Alright, so now I've got a nice chocolatey donut. Maybe I'll go ahead and make a nice chocolatey frosting to go on top of that. So I'll go ahead and make a copy of this. So I'll select it all with my selection tool, Control C to copy, Control V to paste. And while I've got it selected, I'll just go ahead and take off the stroke. And now maybe I'll make this a chocolate frosting, but maybe I won't have this one be quite as dark as the so we'll go ahead and call that good. So I'm going to go ahead and select that, and we'll go under Object, Blend, and Make. So we'll go under Effect. We're going to go to Distort and Transform. We're going to choose Roughen just like we did before, and I'm going to set my details to 2 again, and make that smooth. Go ahead and click OK. So now I've got my chocolate donut with chocolate frosting on top. And if I wanted to, I could select these sprinkles. If I hold Shift, I can select all the individual sprinkles. And something else I could do, so I won't have to necessarily select every individual circle again, is I can group these together. So there's a couple ways you can group it together. So you can either go under Object and you can select Group, or you can right click and you can group. And when you group it together, it holds it in its position. So however you have it placed on there, that's the position it's going to stay in. So I can make a copy of this by hitting Control C, hit Control V, and then since this is grouped together, I can just lay out my sprinkles like so, and it's already arranged. Or I could rotate it just to mix it up a bit so it's not exactly the same as that last donut. Okay, so now you see how you can make these variations of donuts. You can make whatever color frosting, whatever color you want the donut to be. Just follow those steps and you will be good to go. I think what I want to do is maybe add a colored background just to add some variety. Variety is the spice of life. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to open up my layers. Okay, so if you can't find your layers over here on the right side, just look under Window, scroll down to find layers. It's in alphabetical order. And then what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to lock this layer for a minute. So I'll click on this little space next to the eyeball, and that will lock that layer. So now I can't do anything to this layer until I unlock it. Then what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to create a new layer. Then I'm going to drag this new layer underneath layer 1. So I don't want to drop it inside layer 1, I want to keep it separate. Okay, then I'm going to take my rectangle tool and I'm going to take a rectangle and draw a rectangle. And since I have this layer underneath layer 1, it'll show up under layer 1. And then I can choose whatever color I want my background to be. So you choose whatever you like and you can call that good. So I like that color. I'm going to go ahead and roll with that. And then I'm going to maybe lock this layer, unlock this layer, and then what I'm going to go ahead and do is select layer 1, and I'm going to just move my donuts down a little bit so I've got a little bit more of a centralized location for them. Okay, so when you're all done, you've got some lovely little donuts.